The research station on Veth 7 was humanity's proudest outpost, a gleaming dome of reinforced alloy planted in the middle of a jungle that had no business tolerating humans. It tolerated them anyway. That was the thing about humans. They had a way of being tolerated. Dr. Alina Marsh had been on Veth 7 for 14 months, cataloging the megafauna of the southern continent with the quiet obsession of someone who genuinely preferred animals to people. Her partner in the field, Sergeant Riker Holt, had been assigned to keep her alive. So far, he was doing a passable job. "Don't touch it," Riker said, for what felt like the 100th time that week. "I'm not touching it," Alina said, touching it. The creature that she was touching, and absolutely should not have been touching, was a Vethari cub. Roughly the size of a large dog, though built more like a nightmare. It had 6 limbs, retractable claws on each, scales that shifted from deep violet to amber depending on its mood, and a jaw that could, according to the Xenobiology reports, shear through tempered durasteel given enough motivation. It was currently the color of pale gold, which Alina had noted in her research journal meant curious or playful. She had not noted what it meant when the gold flickered briefly into deep, warning crimson. The cub's head tilted. It looked at her hand. It looked at her face. It looked at her hand again. Then it bit her. Not a full bite. Not the kill strike its species was capable of. A nip, really. A testing nip. The kind a young predator uses to establish whether something is prey, threat, or beneath notice. Alina yanked her hand back with a sharp hiss. A thin line of blood welled across her palm, bright red against her dark skin. Riker was already moving, hand on his sidearm, body placing itself between Alina and the cub, every muscle coiled. "How bad?" "Surface. I'm fine." She looked at her hand with more curiosity than alarm. "Fascinating. That was a juvenile dominance test. It bit you." "Barely. I've had paper cuts worse." She reached into her field kit and began wrapping her palm with calm, practiced efficiency. It was testing hierarchy, seeing if I'd submit or retaliate. Riker stared at her. Then he looked at the cub. The cub, for its part, had gone very still. This was unusual. Vethari cubs were not known for going still. They were known for escalating, for pushing until something broke or fled or bled enough to be interesting. It was how they learned the shape of the world, by finding the edges of everything. But something had changed in the last few seconds, and the cub was processing it with the focused attention of a young mind encountering something it did not have a category for. The human had been nipped, and the human had not run. The human had also not cried out beyond that single sharp sound. She had looked at the wound with the same expression she used when examining track impressions in the mud, analytical, almost pleased. Then she had repaired herself, with her own forelimbs. With some kind of wrapping that smelled faintly of chemicals, she had simply closed the wound and gone back to looking at the cub. The cub's scales cycled through several colors in rapid succession. Confusion, recalculation, something that, in an adult Vethari, would have been called unease. Alina crouched down slowly, bringing herself to the cub's eye level. "Hello again," she said softly. "Done testing." The cub did not move. Its eyes, 6 of them, arranged in a slight arc across its wide skull, were fixed on her wrapped hand. Riker kept his hand near his weapon but didn't draw. He had learned, over 14 months, that Alina's instincts about animals were usually better than his instincts about almost anything. "It's confused," Alina murmured. It expected a fear response. Or aggression. Possibly both. "It should be getting aggression," Riker muttered. "From me. You're making it worse. You're signaling threat display. Relax your shoulders." He didn't relax his shoulders, but he did stop moving. The cub's gaze lifted from the wrapped hand to Alina's face. In Vethari social structure, what little xenobiologists had managed to map of it, prolonged eye contact from a smaller animal to a larger one was either extreme submission or a profound misreading of the situation. Alina held the gaze without blinking. The cub was the one who looked away first. In the jungle's vocabulary, this was significant. The cub's scales had settled into a pale, uncertain silver, a color Alina had not yet classified because she had never seen it before. She extended her wrapped hand, slowly, palm down. Riker made a strangled sound that was not quite a word. The cub looked at the hand, looked at her face. Its nostrils, a row of slitted openings along its jaw, flared. It was reading her, she knew. Vedhari had olfactory processing that made human noses look like evolutionary afterthoughts. It could smell the blood under the wrap. It could likely smell her heart rate, her hormone levels, the specific biochemical cocktail of an organism that was neither frightened nor threatening. Just present. The cub took one step forward, then another. It pressed its broad, scaled nose against her knuckles. Riker exhaled very slowly through his teeth. Good, Alina said, to no one in particular. Good. You see? Not prey. Not threat. She kept her voice low and even, the same tone she used for everything from nervous first contact reports to ordering coffee. Just something new. The cub pulled back and sat, in the particular way that Vedhari sat. Haunches low, front forelimbs planted, head tilted with an expression that its species probably did not intend to look thoughtful, but absolutely did. It was trying to categorize her. She could see the effort of it, the way its eyes tracked her micro-movements, the way it kept returning to the wrapped hand. The bite had not produced the expected result. The equation was wrong, and it knew the equation was wrong, and it was trying to figure out why. What are you? It seemed to be asking, in the only language it had. Alina smiled. We get that a lot, she said, as if it could understand. Maybe, in some way that didn't require shared language, it could. Because the thing about humans, the thing that every species eventually discovered, sometimes peacefully and sometimes not, was that they didn't fit neatly into any predator's mental map. They weren't big enough to be threats on first inspection. They weren't fast enough to be prey worth chasing. They healed with baffling stubbornness. They didn't run from things that should have made them run. And they looked back. Always, they looked back, with those two fixed, forward-facing eyes that should have marked them as predators, but were somehow too curious to be frightening. They looked back with the expression of something that was genuinely interested in you, specifically, as a phenomenon worth understanding. It was deeply unsettling to species that relied on fear as a social language. It was also, over time, rather hard to resist. The cub made a sound, a low, rattling hum that rose at the end like a question. Alina made a soft sound back, nonsense syllables at a similar pitch, and watched the cub's scales flicker with something warm and amber. Riker finally let his hand fall from his weapon. You're going to name it, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to name her, Alina corrected, consulting her scanner. And she's going to be an absolute nightmare for my research parameters because I'm not supposed to establish individual relationships with subjects. She bit you. And she thought better of it. That's called learning, Riker. That's the whole point. He looked at the cub. The cub looked at him with 6 eyes and an expression of cool, assessing judgment. Riker, who had faced down armed insurgents on 3 different continents and walked away without flinching, felt obscurely as if he was being evaluated and found adequate. Fine, he said. What are you naming her? Alina considered for a moment, watching the small, terrible, increasingly curious creature that had bitten her, and then decided she was something other than ordinary. Pip, she said. Riker blinked. You're naming a 6-limbed apex predator Pip. She's 4 months old and she fits in a carry crate. Alina stood, brushing red Veth, 7 dirt from her knees. She'll grow into the dignity eventually. Behind them, Pip made the rattling hum sound again, quieter this time, and patted 3 steps in Alina's direction before stopping, as if she hadn't decided yet whether this was a commitment. Humans, she was learning, were strange. They bled and didn't flee. They looked without flinching. They wrapped their wounds with the calm efficiency of something that expected to be wounded sometimes and considered it a minor inconvenience at most. But they also made soft, curious sounds back at you. And they stayed. That, perhaps, was the strangest thing of all.